Hello, I'm Kathleen Petticord.
And I'm Leif Simon.
Welcome to another edition of our Live and Invest Overseas podcast. We've been talking about Europe recently. It's a part of the world that Leif and I have enjoyed for a long while. In fact, we met in Ireland. We moved to Ireland together, where we lived for about 7 years, and then we spent 4 years in Paris when our children were young. In addition, we've traveled through most of the continent. We've owned real estate in Spain and Portugal, Croatia. We have a little ruin of a house in Croatia. So we have a fair amount of experience in this part of the world, and we thought we might share with you today. We came up with a list of the 9 things we most appreciate about life on the continent, our 9 favorite things about the old world. All right, Leif, do you want to kick us off number 1?
Well, number 1 is, I forgot my glasses today, but you tend to not buy things you don't need in Europe because there's no space. So Americans have their houses, 2-car garages. We've spoken to people over the years who, we're all proud that they've downsized from their 10,000 square foot house to a 4,000 square foot house, but still haven't downsized enough to make the move overseas. When we had a 4,000 square foot house in Ireland, so fair enough, but no 2-car garage to store stuff.
And no basement, no attic, no basement,
storage
shed.
No attic. So we had, furniture in each of the places and nice sized closets for clothing. Moving to Paris, a small apartment with limited closet space. You don't buy things that you don't need. You buy something and you use it, and then you buy it again. So that helps with budgeting, of course, as well. We've been in the States the last 3.5 months, and all the things at the checkout. That's interesting, nice. That's why they put it there. You end up buying it, and for example, my mother has 47 pairs of scissors because she sees scissors in the store and she thinks, oh, those are cute. You don't do that in Europe, so it saves on the budget.
You're naturally downsized all the time. And we have heard over all these years, over the decades, from lots of readers who say that one challenge for them, one hurdle they're working to overcome as they try to make a plan to move overseas is downsizing, that they're stuck with their stuff.
Right. Don't
let your stuff be a reason not to make a move overseas. Making the move anywhere, Europe or wherever you're interested in going, can be a reason for downsizing, and you will appreciate it after you've gone through the exercise. It's very liberating. But if you're moving to Europe, you'll need to really, really, really scale back because apartments are small.
Or buy a house with some land and some outbuildings and put all your stuff in the outbuildings. But I'd say get rid of the stuff and keep out the outbuildings.
All right, number 2, second thing that we came up with that we really appreciate about Europe is the cafe culture. As we said, apartments are small. You're living in a small space. Often you can be in 50 to 100 square meters.
Right.
And that's not a lot of space to live in. But in Europe, you live in your city or your village.
Right.
Paris is our frame of reference. And in Paris, our apartment is 112 square meters. And I say 112 because every one of them counts. So we remember the 12.
And that's about 1,200 square feet.
Right. And so not a huge amount of space, but all central Paris is on our doorstep. So within just a few minutes walk, we have several different parks, gardens, lots of places to stroll, to sit, to enjoy the outdoors, to meet with people, to meet up with friends for picnics, etc., a drink in the afternoon. And that's how people live. And that cafe culture where the city is really your living room, in a sense, where the city is part of your space that you live in every day. We really enjoy that.
Well, and even a small townhouse in Italy, in Abruzzo that we talk about, you can buy a 2-bedroom townhouse in a village for 50,000 euros and fix it up. That's still, it's a townhouse, but it's still fairly small. But the villages, it's not just Paris that has the cafes. The villages have the cafes and the restaurants, even outdoors. In Portugal when we're there, and especially in season in the summertime, there's lots of outdoor dining and places to have a drink outside as well.
Well, and so many towns, villages, cities in Europe are built around a town square.
Right.
And the town square is the heart of the community, not just of the city, but of the residents. And it would be very common before or after dinner to find the town square full of people just sitting on a bench, reading the newspaper, taking a stroll, having a little walk after dinner.
COVID aside this year, but
Yeah, right.
Right.
Normally. All right, number 3.
Well, one thing is the train system, but not just the train system. Now there's the low-cost airline system, again, COVID aside. But getting around Europe can be very easy and liberating, I guess. You don't need a car. So we can take the train to the south of France. We've taken the train to Geneva. We took the train 2 winters ago to Chamonix, and didn't bother with a car because we could walk to everything we needed to for Christmas. So getting around to see other parts of the country you're in, or, big countries like France or Spain, or even other parts of Europe, the transportation systems between the trains and the low-cost airlines can make it very easy and affordable.
Well, and that segues to public transportation in general.
Right.
So in a city, Paris, again, I come back to that as my frame of reference, but with the metro and the RER, you can travel anywhere in the city and environs, beyond the city itself for very low cost, very easy, accessible. They run, again, current quarantines aside, but under normal circumstances, the trains run regularly until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right. And even in country villages, you don't necessarily need to have a car. Local buses and biking. We've known people who've lived in small villages and they just have a bike. If they need to, carry more than a bag full of groceries, they can get a taxi, or now Uber is, of course, available. But so with Europe, no matter where you are, you can probably get away without a car if you want to.
All right.
So, affordable wine. This is especially the case that I appreciate with regard to Kathy's champagne preferences. But in France, in particular, affordable.
Everyone needs a vice, and that's mine.
Affordable champagne, but also prosecco, cava, and wine in general. Our daughter likes to say you can still get a decent, even today with inflation, since we live there, still get a decent drinkable bottle of wine in France for as little as a couple of euros, and it just makes it makes
life nice.
Right, it just makes it much more affordable to do those kinds of things, as opposed to the $10-12 minimum price for a bottle, even cheap California wine.
Right, it's not a big indulgence or a big splurge to have wine with dinner every night.
Right.
It's just an affordable part of anyone's budget. Okay, and then following on from that, fresh food. One thing that we really appreciate and honestly are missing very much these few months we're staying here in the United States, we find it much harder to eat healthy here in the United States than when we're in Europe. In Europe, it's hard not to eat healthy. You have to work to eat unhealthy.
Right.
Whereas here in the United States, everywhere you go, you're tempted. You can't go walk in or out of any shop anywhere without being tempted by all the candy and cakes and sweets and etc. They're just at every end. They're in kiosks. They're at every end of every aisle, at the checkout, in every place. In Paris, for example, if you walk into a corner shop, you aren't going to find hot dogs and nachos and donuts. You're going to find hams and cheeses, fresh baguette, fresh fruit, even fresh vegetables, right, even in little corner shops. So if you want to indulge in candy and sweets, you go to a bakery. It's a specific stop. But as in the ordinary scheme of things, going to the grocery store, it's not about aisles and aisles of non-food.
Right. Well, and for candy, it's coming up on Halloween, and our daughter wanted us to send her some American-style candy for the Halloween trick-or-treating they're doing with our granddaughter for her first Halloween. And because you can't find the American-style candies in Europe, I was able to find a website that has American foods for her, so she ordered some. But there's less sweets, less sugar, less everything. Well, in fact, Ireland's Supreme Court, if you haven't heard this, in the last few weeks has declared that Subway bread in Ireland is not bread. It's a confectioner's pastry. It has too much sugar in it. And the whole thing came up because Subway was trying to get out of being taxed on the bread because they were saying it was bread, which has a lower tax than pastries in Ireland. But the Supreme Court has decided it is pastries because it's too much sugar.
And then all of the markets, farmers markets, are regular and can be a way that you shop regularly, not a special occasion where you make an outing to a farmer's market, but
Right.
every week, twice a week, say, you can go to a nearby farmer's market and buy, locally grown fresh produce. Okay, then let's see. Number 7.
Did we skip number 6?
Well, we talked about walking already.
Okay.
Oh, no, we didn't really, did
Not
we?
really. We talked about walking to go to the grocery store, but
Right, not even as a general part of life.
but walking in general. Again, in Paris, no car, the metro's there, but walking is easy, and Paris has many small villages, so each arrondissement, each neighborhood in the arrondissement has pretty much everything you need,
Mhm.
but you can walk farther afield if you want. But even in places like Algarve, where we had an apartment where we do conferences, the town where we do conferences, the hotel is a mile from the center of the small town, but we would walk to dinner or to the beach or whatever when we were there. Part of it is, rather than driving, because you spend more time looking for parking than you would for the walk, but it's also just more pleasant and healthier, of course.
Right, it's exactly a naturally healthy lifestyle. We know so many people who have been so excited making a move to Europe to find that they've lost weight without even trying, without even thinking about it, because you are eating healthier and just walking everywhere and carrying your groceries home yourself. And so exercise, a very low level, non-stress level of exercise just becomes a part of your day-to-day routine. All right, and then we have as number 7 on our list, culture, which I guess would come to everyone's mind, but we really do appreciate the museums, the architecture, the history, the bookstores, castles, forts.
There's always something new to see and learn and hear. In Paris, of course, we live there, we spend a lot of time there. Still haven't seen everything, but even in a place like Algarve, where we visited every year for the last 5 years, for a week or so before or after our conferences there, we've seen the different forts and the museums, the cork factory, and other interesting things like that, just in that small area. Of course, you're not living there full time. If you're living there full time, you have many other things to do as well. Lots of towns to visit, and again, going back to the walking and the shopping.
So I think that's an important question to ask yourself if you're thinking about Europe. Is that the kind of lifestyle that you would appreciate, that you would enjoy? Excuse me. One that's full of walking and history, because it's everywhere. It's each city is hundreds of years old. Each part of the continent has hundreds of years of its own history to discover, and that regular ongoing discovery is just a part of your life in that part of the world. All right, number 8.
Festivals, again, COVID aside, in France in particular, but I think it's very similar in the rest of Europe. Many of the small towns, villages have their festival weekend, their festival week over the summertime, and so there's always something to do. And so if you're in France, in a small village, your village may have a festival, a Saints' Day parade, something like that. And then the next village over will have theirs the next week. And so it's really just an ongoing party, if you've got the time, to go from town to town and check out what they're doing.
All right, and then number 9 on our list is the way you shop. So, there are there are a version of the big footprint stores in some parts of Europe, certainly in the big cities. But Walmart, or any Walmart equivalent, hasn't overtaken the shopping scene completely. And so there are still lots of niche and boutique shops where grocery shopping you can do at big US-style grocery stores for the most part throughout Europe. But for the day-to-day running errands, if you need a pair of shoes resold, or if you're looking for a piece of hardware or a certain tool, there are specific places you learn in your neighborhood to go for that. And you get to know the person who runs the shop, and the guy who runs the shoe shop may be a third generation shoe guy.
Cobbler,
thank you. And it's a craft to him, and he takes it seriously, and you can
still find the artisans, and again, in Paris is our most current frame of reference, but on our street there is a men's tailor, there's a cobbler, there's a cheese shop, there's art shops and things like that.
There are a couple of boutique dress shops,
right?
Designers.
And then around the corner there's the smaller hardware stores and things like that. Kathy's talking about, where you do get to know the owner. Of course, Paris has the big stores as well, but it's a small town kind of feel of
each
shopping.
Neighborhood, even of a city like Paris, a very big city like Paris, can feel like a little village.
Right.
And you get to know your way around, and you get to know all the shopkeepers and your neighbors coming and going from the shops, and it's a way of becoming part of your community.
Right.
The shopping becomes part of your lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, you can still buy stuff on Amazon in France and Spain. They have Amazon.fr and Amazon whatever in Spain. I don't know what the end is. The UK has Amazon.co.uk. So you can buy your fabricated stuff, your plastics on Amazon if you need those. But
so you can get anything from anywhere in the world.
Right, but handmade, high-quality stuff is still available and easily found in many parts of Europe. Unlike the U.S., where if you wanted to go find something that was locally handmade and high quality, it's much rarer.
Right. All right. There are 9 reasons we love being in Europe. What are your reasons? Join us next week. We are having our first ever Live and Invest in Europe virtual conference, and we'd love to hear from you about your reasons why you're thinking about living, retiring, investing, maybe owning a pied-à-terre of your own on the continent. This event, like all of our virtual events during this period of COVID, is live and interactive. Lots of opportunity for questions and for interacting and engaging one-on-one with us and with all of our speakers, experts, and expats currently living in Europe. So if you haven't yet registered for this event, if Europe is on your radar, I really encourage you. This will be your best chance this year, I would say, to consider all the best that Europe has to offer. We hope we'll see you there. Meantime, we will be back again next week with another edition of our Live and Invest Overseas podcast. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone.